Hi there, thanks for joining. My name is Lauren Scheller, and I am currently a PBL district coach for the Buck Institute for Education. Before leaving the classroom, I was a French teacher for 7 years, and I had the opportunity to bring PBL to my classroom and to my students. It transformed my teaching because it engaged students to become passionate learners of a language. I'm excited to share what I've learned with you today, and I look forward to learning from you in your PBL journey. So I'm going to just share my screen here for a minute. In the next 20 minutes, I'll provide examples of authenticity in PBL, and I'll explain what it takes for a project to be authentic. This will be in the context of a useful tool called the product square. So in today's webinar, you're going to be able to answer the questions: what is a product square, and how can using the product square help me improve my project design? So I'll begin by talking about how the product square came to be. Once upon a time, on an island far, far away, teachers were designing PBLL units during a summer institute. As one of the facilitators, I, as well as my colleagues at the NFLRC, we were reviewing project outlines to provide formative feedback to teachers. We noticed that the project seemed a little bit off track, some entirely off track, and some were definitely not grounded in the gold standard PBL design elements. So we teased out similar shortcomings in many of the projects and made some generalizations. We generalized that novice PBLL teachers struggle with making projects authentic, and we hypothesized that if they could see the relation between the project driving question, the purpose, the audience, and the student product, that they could increase the relevance, rigor, and authenticity of their projects. And so this tool was born, the product square. So have a look at some of the questions that we wanted our participants to reflect on. We wanted teachers to ask themselves, is my project meaningful and does it serve a real purpose? And is what the students create appropriate for the authentic audience of the project? Will it meet their needs and answer or address the student challenge? And therefore, do I have the right audience? And finally, why do kids care? How is this project a meaningful experience for their students? So let's dig into some of the issues that you might confront in a project that would lead you to need this tool as a scaffold. Much of what I mentioned really relates to authenticity. And authenticity is a defining characteristic of PBLL because it is especially important in the world language context. Languages live and breathe. They are real tools used to do real things. So when we are helping our learners with a new language, then we can go beyond language forms and functions, and we can help them develop an authentic understanding of the world. And we can have them use language in a real way, an authentic way. So what does it mean to be authentic in a project? So I'm zooming in here to some criteria, and if you recall the gold standard PBL rubric that was previously shared by the Buck Institute for Education. Authentic projects will meet a real-world need in the world beyond the classroom, or the projects created by students would be used by real people. They'd focus on a problem or issue or topic that's relevant to students' lives, or on an issue that is actually being faced by adults in the world that students will be entering. An authentic project could set up a scenario or a simulation that's realistic, even if it is fictitious. Authentic projects involve tools, tasks, or processes used by adults in real settings and by professionals in the workplace. Keep these criteria in mind as we begin to view various projects that are enhanced by the product square. There are many blogs you can read on making student products authentic, and they're shared here in that link. And they'll be shared at the end too. In particular, this blog, in which John Larmer from the Buck Institute for Education shares his thoughts on what it takes for a project to be authentic, is particularly interesting for novice PBLL practitioners. John describes to us a sliding scale of authenticity. So depending on where you are in your educational setting or your PBL journey, you might want to simulate work done in the real world. So look at the middle row. Somewhat authentic means students are doing work that simulates what happens in the world outside of school. And in a project like that, that is somewhat authentic, students could play the role of food critics, architects, nutritionists, website designers, all sorts of careers, and they're placed in a scenario that reflects what might actually occur in the real world. Students then would create products that are the kinds of products people do use. In the world language classroom, I'm encouraging you to find a true use for student work, but we recognize that this cannot always be the case. We also want to design projects where students will do work that is real to them, that personal authenticity, or has a direct impact in their lives. As John notes, the quote-unquote real world could still be school, which is a very real place for students. In these projects, students might advocate for a cause, take action to improve their community, or perform a service for someone. So what do real people do on the job, and what are the corresponding products they create in the workplace? Consider the professionals we interact with on a needs or daily basis. Think of how their profession relates to authentic tasks or problems. For example, a chef is not going to prepare a brochure for his food patrons, but he might prepare a menu, or she might present a meal. A writer would not a writer would write a screenplay for his or her director. An architect would make plans for her client. A healthcare worker would give medical advice to his patients. Citizens would write blogs to the general media or to mobilize peers or community members. A consultant gives advice on a specialized topic to a very specialized audience, et cetera, et cetera. At the following link, there is an additional list of authentic products you might find useful when designing your product. And once again, I'll share these links via the NFLRC. It's also important to consider the proficiency level of your students. So this tool is also in the resources link we shared. A novice learner might make a list or draw a map, while an advanced learner might give a speech or write something like a blog post. When brainstorming project ideas, you can also focus on our world and our students in our world and in their world. So think about challenges, issues, and problems that are relevant to their lives. What issues might students be faced with by adults in the world that matter to them? Or what issues are being faced by adults that would matter to students? I love sharing this one. At a past ACTFL convention, Annie Griffith shared her photographs during her keynote speech. And she shared all these issues that were water related, education related, gender related, and they were highlighted beautifully in her photography. So we see there's real world issues that students can create solutions to address. Let's take a look at some other more concrete sources, such as the International Baccalaureate, or the IB program, is organized into 6 themes, which are represented here, and you can use those as a source for inspiration. They focus on, they have a global focus, and they're a great starting point to think about authenticity in projects. You can also think about AP classes, and the AP College Board Themes for World Languages provides us various categories to think about problems, challenges, and issues. So if we look at each of these categories, consider diversity or economic issues in your community, ethical questions in recent world events, or any other themes here that presents, any other themes here that are present, students would or could be easily engaged to learn more about. So don't be afraid even to survey students and get to know what they think is interesting and what they care about and what they're concerned about. Let's look at how the product square addresses issues within the teacher projects. These are some examples from a past summer institute. Just to quickly recap, this is the product square, and it helps project designers align the purpose of a project to both the product and the problem, question, or challenge. But it also helps to ensure that the product created by the student demonstrates their learning and answers and solves a real issue. And then in turn, the product would have to be for an appropriate audience. Finally, the product square helps ground our work by having us design a project to support students' interest and ensure that we answer the question, why would kids care about this project? So let's look into some examples. Here's an example which comes from a high school level 2 classroom based on a book chapter on technology. So the teacher had some constraints, they had to follow the book, but they developed the unit into a project. So the project idea is on technology for parents in the community. Let's use the square to see how this project was designed and how it promoted authentic problems that serve a real purpose for a real audience. So here's the completed square. And how do we know we're on the right track? Well, each square is completed and relates to the question. Does the technology night address the question, how does technology help my community? Yes. Would the audience care for the technology night? I think you could argue yes. Does it support a solution to a real issue? Yes, there's a disengaged community. Spanish-speaking families are not connected to the school via the technology that exists. And then, of course, why do kids care? Very simply, children like to help others. But in this case, this actual disengagement of families came and bubbled up from a concern that the students had that they addressed in class. Here's a great example of where a project started. The initial idea was to share leisure activities in Hawaii and compare them to the Spanish-speaking world through a media presentation. It was definitely a great starting idea. However, after using the product square, let's see how the project was revised. So we write down the question, how do my leisure activities compare to students in Barcelona? Is there a real purpose for this project? There doesn't appear to be, but let's look at the student product. So it's a multimedia presentation, but who's it for? So it's for students in Spain. How about Spanish speakers traveling, or Spanish-speaking travelers thinking about going to Hawaii? If we're talking about leisure activities, I'm thinking travel. So let's play that scenario out. Let's change it to Spanish-speaking travelers. So then it would need an authentic purpose. So what about if the purpose was to promote tourism and Spanish-speaking travelers were thinking about going to Hawaii? So what would the purpose of educating Spanish travelers about leisure activities be on the Big Island? Does that sound like an authentic purpose? So now we have to go back to our original question and think, how can we change it to relate to our new purpose? So how can we educate and encourage Spanish speakers to visit the Big Island of Hawaii? And that's to promote tourism, right? And our audience matches. But what about the product? So let's have a look at the final copy and see where this teacher ended up. So the project idea of students who live on the Big Island, they'll promote tourism for Spanish speakers in their area. They'll learn about one of the region's favorite leisure activities and develop a culturally relevant promotion or campaign. So the question is, how can we educate and encourage Spanish speakers to visit? The purpose is to promote tourism. We know the audience, and look at the product. It's a little bit more relevant now to the audience, and it matches with the question and the purpose. So students will give a presentation, a video, they'll create a website. It looks like they have some voice and choice here that is persuasive. And so this teacher said his students would care because they live on the Big Island and are familiar with what there is to do on the island, so they're engaged in that. And they enjoy sharing with others what they like to do, and that they would enjoy developing a critical understanding of another culture. Here's another example. Students were tasked with creating a campaign to promote healthy eating and fitness within the community. So take a look at the product square. As we can see, the product or products here are an app, a PSA, a website, a weekly health plan. And these products align with the purpose because the purpose is to raise awareness about healthy living. Looking at the problem, question, or challenge, that aligns with the product because students are demonstrating, they're able to demonstrate their learning and answer the question. And is there an authentic need for this project in the community? According to this teacher, yes. The community is all responsible for raising awareness about the benefits of healthy living. And finally, why do kids care? Kids like teaching others. They like learning about health and fitness, and they get to create their own product for a real person, which is really meaningful for them. Another example where students are writing restaurant reviews for restaurants in a local community. Go ahead and read through this one on your own, moving through the different boxes to see the connections between them. So I hope that you find this tool useful as you design your own project. Building authenticity in projects provides students with an opportunity to become empowered, to affect change in their communities and in the world around them. We really want our students to begin to solve real problems in the classroom so they can become citizens who discuss, analyze, and solve authentic problems in their world. The resources will be shared through the NFLRC, so please don't worry if you missed any of the links. And please do keep in touch. There's my Twitter handle, and I'm happy to accept messages via Twitter and walk you through your project design and think about how you can create a project that's more meaningful and relevant to students. And email as well is a great way to stay in touch. And now staff from the NFLRC will be taking questions. So thank you so much for your time today.